good to go. Welcome back to the Texas Hill Country Insider. I'm Ryan Rendon with the Rendon Realty Group. This is episode number 16, and today we have a special guest on, Sheriff Ayala here of Gillespie County. Sheriff.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've known you for a long time now.
Yes, sir.
We have a long history together, so I'm really looking forward to this one. Obviously, it's going to be great.
Sir.
I think a lot of our listeners are going to be excited to see this too. So
Absolutely.
So before we get started, as I mentioned before, we like to start every episode with a quick prayer, just to kind of bring God into it, help him or have him help us lead us through this this conversation, and then we'll get into your snapshot.
Absolutely.
So, all right. We get this going. Name Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus Christ, thank you for today, and thank you so much for bringing Sheriff Ayala onto the podcast so we could talk about what's happening here within Gillespie County from a mental health standpoint to just a law enforcement standpoint. And thank you just for giving us opportunity to have great guests on like Sheriff Ayala. And I just pray, Lord, that you continue to guide us, lead us each and every day to do the will of our Father in heaven and not our own. I pray all these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, so let's get started with this snapshot. So Chris Ayala is the sheriff of Gillespie County, sworn into office on January 1st, 2025, after defeating two-term incumbent Buddy Mills in a hard-fought 2024 Republican primary runoff. A graduate of Jourdanton High School, Ayala built his law enforcement career locally, serving as an officer with the Fredericksburg Police Department, where he taught the law enforcement program to local high schoolers. That's where we initially met, including future Gillespie County deputies who came up under his instruction. Mental health has been a through line for his career. On his very first day as sheriff, he appointed the department's first ever mental health officer and later partnered with Service Dogs, Inc. to bring a trained facility dog into the department since taking over the office. Ayala has led the county through a wide range of public safety challenges, from deadly house explosions and fatal US 290 accidents to drug interdiction cases, and the regional disaster response to the catastrophic July 2025 Hill Country floods, which triggered a state disaster declaration covering Gillespie County alongside its hard-hit neighbors. Is that about it?
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Absolutely.
All right. So we'll get into this thing a little bit deeper. So again, welcome to the Texas Hill Country Insider. So we'll start simple. And I've heard your story a little bit. I know some key points, I guess, through the ACTS retreats and just obviously being a student of yours. But where did you grow up and what first got you interested in law enforcement?
So I grew up in an awesome little town called Jourdanton, Texas, south of San Antonio, about 40 miles on Highway 16. Grew up there with two amazing parents, and I always say that they did their best to raise me despite of me and my stupidity through life. So they did a great job. As a young man, I was blessed being able to make police siren sounds to the T, and I would ride my bike up and down. And I think that was kind of the first prelude to me wanting to actually get into law enforcement. But then I was also blessed to interact with officers in my youthfulness and teenagers that I think set the tone for me to go forward into law enforcement.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. So going into Jourdanton is how you pronounce it. Jourdanton High School. So what brought you from there? What brought you to Fredericksburg? I know you had some other departments you were with before coming to Fredericksburg. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What brought you? So actually, let's touch on the departments you were with before Fredericksburg, and then what led you eventually to come here.
You got it. I started off as a reserve officer with the city of Floresville. In Wilson County. After doing that for 10 months, I took on a full-time job with the Pleasanton Police Department, which is about 5 miles from my hometown of Jourdanton. And then after being there for just over 3.5 years, Sheriff Tackett in Wilson County asked me if I'd be interested in coming into Wilson County as a deputy, which is the county seat is Floresville. And so and I had met him through my 10 months of working with the Floresville PD. And I jumped over there, and I did just over 4.5 years there. And I had a serious accident on duty. And while I was in light duty taking a class, I met 3 officers from Fredericksburg, and I'm going to mention by name, but Renee Avalos is the reason why I sit in front of you. And he asked me if I'd be interested in coming to Fredericksburg. And I the first thing out of my mouth is I said, "Where's Fredericksburg?" And he chuckled and goes, "Man, I don't get that very often. Everybody knows where Fredericksburg's at."
Right.
I said, "Man, I sure don't." But anyways, he invited me in. And so that was back in 98. I eventually started the application and would get hired in 1999 here in Fredericksburg.
Okay.
And been here ever since.
Wow.
Yeah. Gosh. So it's been a good run.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yes, it has.
So going back to that major accident, because of course, you told us as students about your accident. We've heard it again in other, the men's retreats and stuff we've been to. But tell us a little bit about that accident, because that was a major accident.
It was the epiphany for Chris Ayala. It was, I hit a horse on patrol. I don't remember any of it. I have no recollection of it. I currently wear really expensive dental implants because of that horse. I've had some major work on my face and body. But, they always say that when God gets your attention, he's going to get it. Mm-hmm. It's whether you adhere to that attention grabber. And honestly, my mom had made some comments to me because I was bodybuilding and I was Mr. All That.
Right.
I was all that.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then I hit that horse and I wasn't all that. But she had really said to me that week, that Friday before the accident, that I was taking too many chances, and God only gives you so many chances. Mm. And I chuckled because, again, I was all that. And then I hit that horse, and when I hit the horse, I don't remember any of it, but they were able to get the audio. But the song that was playing at the time that I hit that horse and I was calling for help was Vince Gill's "Give Me One More Last Chance Before You Say We're Through."
No kidding.
And I remember hearing that. I was like, maybe Mom's right. And I started saying, and I literally said to myself, dude, you're going to have to start getting your life in check. And I tell everybody that I wasn't the best dad at the time. I wasn't the best husband at the time. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a bad person. I just wasn't doing what I know God expected of me.
Right.
And so at that point, I truly believe that is the man was developed from that accident to saying, hey, I got a second chance. Mm-hmm. Let's make it right. Let's do it right this time. And I do believe that from that point, the man you sit across from me right now is that man that said, hey, God's got you, but he does only give you so many chances. Sure. And so I truly believe that accident was extremely instrumental in me being here in Gillespie County, Texas. So,
that's incredible. So that was 99 you got here. What year was that accident?
So 1997. So
97.
I was literally getting released back to full duty, dental, all that, while I was applying for the police department here. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I got the clearance about 4 months before I actually got hired. So
oh my goodness.
It was about a good year-long therapy, physical therapy, the whole dental work and everything. But it gives you. Pain has a way of making you think. Mm-hmm. Pain has a way of grabbing you, and I couldn't eat food and stuff. And it was a point where at one time I had what I called my dentine smile, and I show pictures of me before and after the wreck. Mm-hmm. But it's really struggles. They always say God doesn't always give it to you; He builds you up first for the fight and stuff. And I believe that. I truly believe that. And in my early career, before the wreck, I was involved in shootings, and that right there was already struggling in a mental in that capacity. And then to throw that in there, 15 months later, that was, I think, God setting me up to say, hey, I love you, but I need you to be better. I need you to do better. And I think that was the change. So, yeah.
So was your mom talking about when you said you're taking too many chances and all that stuff? Was that through the work stuff?
Yes, because I was bragging on how I arrested 2 guys by myself and I wrestled them. And of course, that was that young 20-something guy that we all wore once at some point, and then, she was telling me, well, you got lucky this time, that kind of thing. And she goes, just, you need to stop taking so many. It sounds like you're using up all your chances in one weekend is basically what she said. And, of course, I chuckled and everything. And, of course, I never had an idea what was coming. And, of course, it was November 31st, Halloween night. And I remember from 1 a.m. into the 1st of November, but I don't remember after that for a few days, or truly understand for a few days, and what really happened and so forth. And so it was definitely. If I look back and I think of how physically fit I was prior to that, it is to where I could lift hundreds of pounds to where I could barely pick up a gallon of milk.
Wow, it
humbles you. Yeah. But I will say this, the one thing about brotherhood and law enforcement, at the time I was living with 2 troopers. And you find out who your friends are. And when that happened, those guys tremendously took good care of me. I had buddies that I worked with in Pleasanton that once I got better, they came and picked me up, took me out to hang out with me, and you realize that there's a brotherhood in what we do, but I'll never forget that, what those guys did for me. And they were a handful of the many that did things for me in that sense of the word. So, yeah.
Wow, I love that. Yeah. I've talked about my career a little bit in the Air Force. Security forces, obviously, it's a lot different. It is than civilian, law enforcement departments, but we had a little bit of experience with some of that stuff. And when it came to training, I'm just kind of curious, going back to the instance, say, with you arresting the two guys.
Mm-hmm.
So the years that you've kind of built, the experience you've built over the years as a police department, a cop, and then leading into sheriff's department, all that stuff. So when you have maybe a young sheriff's deputy, or maybe even doing some training with the police department, so what would you teach these guys going into a situation like that, rather than try to handle these two? They could be big old jacked,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, cartel guys or something. So is it wait on some backup to get there first before you try to handle it?
Absolutely. Use those brain cells that you have, and
let ego get away.
Yeah, let those synapses say, "Hey, this is probably not a good move by yourself." And of course, when you work in a rural county like we did, Wilson was just under 1,200 square miles, so we only had two of us at the most time working, so you were kind of on your own. But yeah, so but the one thing is that when I say to young officers, if they're listening, when you're at that type of situation, you need to look and listen. Look at what you see and listen to what your mind and your body's telling you, because sometimes you don't, and you have this idea, well, I've been working out, I've taken some hand-to-hand combat classes, I think I can do this.
Right.
I wouldn't do it, but there are going to be times where they force their hand and you have no choice. So you got to be prepared for both.
Right. Yeah, I mean, especially if they are potentially going to be injuring or taking the life of
Absolutely.
somebody else, you have to. You got to
step in. Yeah, there's no waiting. Yeah. Backup's good to a degree, but back in, I would say when I got into it over 30 years ago, people adhered to our uniform. They adhered to our patrol cars. Over the past 5 years, that's not happening. I think now you're going to have to earn every bit of that control of the environment. You're going to have to be able to domineer that. Even verbally, you're going to have to learn how to take dominance over that situation. But you got to do it in a way that you don't escalate it by screeching your yells and yelling at them and everything. Right. Threats are only good if you can back them up. So that's the one thing I tell. Don't make a threat you can't keep. Right. And so I think as we look at the change in law enforcement, we have law enforcement officers that are making really fast decisions, driving at high rates. Their blood pressure is up, and of course we're A personalities, to do what we do.
Right.
And I think sometimes they get into it, and it's really hard to retract those skids when you're moving that fast. But I think that a lot of the training goes into thinking before you do, but also you have to also think while you're doing too.
Right.
And it's sometimes hard to retract when you're going full speed ahead. And that system is somewhat under control. Is when do you finally say, okay, I'm willing to let my guard down now? And with the modern camera in every corner, on every roof, on every pole, you have to really think about that.
Right.
And the best thing, and the deputies will tell you when I took office, the most important thing is we have to respect the people that we're dealing with, good, bad, or indifferent, because I say this. It does not look good on video when you're going hardcore on a person.
Right.
It could be justified. It just doesn't look good. Right. And if you think you're not being recorded, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Man, something. Yeah. And then when it comes to a training standpoint, of course, I only have the experience I had through the Air Force. And, we do yearly use of force training and stuff like that. And grappling and stuff like hand-to-hand type stuff, probably not as often as we should, but we're also in the Air Force. We're dealing with, military members and their spouses and kids and stuff. So we usually don't deal with stuff that often. But what do y'all do from like a training standpoint to help out, raise up their heart rate, get them in a high tense situation where they know how to respond? I'm just kind of curious. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever.
So in reality, I've been in office for 18 months. One of my goals was to get our department into what I call a fit for duty program. And actually this is the month, this is July.
Okay.
And it's really to push the guys at this point, to push themselves. And, hope I'm leading by example, but when I officially knew I'd won the office, the first thing I did is like, if you're going to talk the talk, you better be able to look good. So,
right.
So I've actually shed over 50 pounds since July of 24.
That's awesome.
And managed to maintain it. Now, of course, my body may be in better shape, but my bones aren't. So I have to still be very careful. But, we are doing a job that physical fitness is a huge need in that, not just in strength, but also in the ability to breathe under stress. Of course, as you can see, we wear gear that doesn't always allow our bodies and chest to expand under stress. So we have to be in better shape. So I'm going to be encouraging the guys over this, starting as this month, to really push to get themselves in shape, even if it's just walking.
Right.
The hard part is we work crazy schedules.
Yeah, I know.
And, you know, we do 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off, and work 2 days and then off 3 days. And, you know, and then you have the family element in there. So you're trying to balance that. You know, and then of course, if you're working a night schedule, it's really hard to get into physical.
Right.
And I'm not making excuses, because we can easily do that. But it really is hard when you're waking up at noon to get ready to go back to work, and it's really hard. And then, so to me, right now, we're working on it. We're going to work on having that deal. But a lot of it is, I will say this, a lot of our deputies do that on their own. They actually take the time out.
That's good.
A lot of them have previous military, so that's got the cadence in them, and they hustle and do it. But I think that on the big scale, it's at this point we're going to work on it not being an individual but a team effort into that.
That's awesome.
That's going to segue our way into having a special operations unit for the community. And, but physical fitness has to be the first step in it.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important. And I'm not going to name the name, but, you know, my neighbor, he's got a full, you know, he's in law enforcement. He's got a full gym set up. And, you know, guys, I know it takes a little bit of investment and stuff like that. You may just start off like you're talking about the row machine or a bike or whatever you can, you know, hit it for 15, 20 minutes. If you can get 30 minutes in, great. I think, you know, if you have the gym option, maybe in your own garage or in the house or in a back room or something, doing something, I think is, we have the same talk with our guys in the Air Force. You know, I'm still a reservist and I'm still around it a little bit, but yeah, it's encouraging them to do what they can.
Absolutely.
You know, so especially when it comes down to, your fitness, when it comes down to a situation where you're having to fight somebody. I mean, that guy you're fighting, he could be a gym goer on a regular basis. And, you know,
well, worse yet, he works in 105-degree weather, hauling metals, tins, swinging a hammer, picking up 50-pound, 40-pound bags of cement, stuff like that, which we don't do.
Right.
You know, and the thing of it is physical fitness, and it's what I would tell guys on FTO. This guy may look 100% out of shape, but I don't know what he does for a living. So he may look out of shape, but his constant work at his job site has built that internal strength that we have no idea. So so we can't always judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
When you go to, he might be 5'8", but he's a solid 5'8". So
you never know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
So before you became sheriff, you of course were the officer with the Fredericksburg Police Department, and you actually taught the law enforcement class at the high school, which, you know, I had the experience with. What was it like teaching the kids, us, you know, at that time, who might grow up to wear the badge themselves one day? I mean, that
I will say this: I taught my first class in 2000, and I stay still connected to that original 17 kids. You know, but one of the things is I went in there and I had this idea that I was going to be this rigid, and you're going to learn, and you know, a police academy style or a military style. Yeah, they didn't go well. So, anyways, but then I finally just took a day, and I can still remember having that conversation with that group. Just ask them what their thoughts were of us as police officers, you know, that kind of. And then I realized that they were clueless to who we really were. And so that kind of gave me an avenue of changing that. Did I think that I would wind up teaching that program, growing it, and doing it for 23 years? Not at all. I really thought it'd be a short-term gig, and then I would step out, go back to patrol. But I got to say the youth is really what sparked. I mean, it was just craziness that, and to watch. You're one of them. To watch you guys as young people and then now see y'all as adult males with families and adult females with families and stuff. But it has been, I would say it's probably the toughest roller coaster emotional as a leader to be in, because you had to walk a fine line, because I was having the expectations of you young men and women to be good and do right. So I definitely had to do that. So I contribute that starting teaching really was a growth for Chris Ayala, and it was I had to represent what I was teaching related to the laws of don't steal, don't do these things, don't drink and drive, don't do drugs, that kind of thing. So it empowered me to be better as a human, because I wanted you to see that example as young adults and stuff. Right. But never did I think it was going to go for 23 years.
Right. Yeah. No kidding. So that I think that's a great opportunity. Having a class like that, criminal justice, in a high school setting is a great way to kind of, you know, especially someone like yourself who is, you know, can relate with a lot of the kids. You're very personal. You're a father figure for a lot of them. You know, I'm sure, because we know a lot of them didn't have their fathers around, broken households, stuff like that.
That's it.
So obviously that is a great opportunity to shed some light on what law enforcement is truly about, having a class like that within our school systems. But what else outside of that? What's another way I think that law enforcement can get in front of the youth to really show them like, this is what we're humans, you know,
Absolutely.
This is we're good people. It's not just all what you see on TV and, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, so a lot of it, social media exists now that, of course, you didn't have, and really you started it, but we didn't have it. But, you know, the big thing is our interaction, you know. Yeah. And I tell the deputies, and I live by it, is that no matter who you encounter, you've got to try to show that respect to them. But really, it's getting them involved, and that's a goal for me, is to eventually get the community involved, get young people involved. But, you know, with the classes, I'm going to say this very proudly, but a gentleman by the name of Lewis Rather, who was a 37-year game warden, took over that role. And when I left, I had this vision that was it. The program was going to disappear, and it wasn't going to continue going. And then as prayers were answered, here comes Lewis Rather, and he's probably going to give me grief about saying it, but that guy, we have the same mindset. It's just really about taking care of, and really the only way to do this is to get people like myself and like Lewis Rather and like some other great officers to get in front of those kids, teach them who we are. But one of the things is I feel like as your instructor, I was honest. This is it. Can't change it. But at the same time, you can solve it by not doing things that get me into your world as law enforcement. Right. And so I think that we're going to have to develop that. I have a vision, and that third-year vision is where I'm working on getting youth back into the mix. But we are assisting Lewis with the competitions that we did and the different things. Yeah. So that's the way I think it still has to go to get to those young people in that. So you can't beat being in front of those good kids. I mean, I'll tell you right now, y'all were like the fountain of youth for me. I'm like, yeah, but I think when the officers realize they're teaching at the same time they're working, it's huge. And I think that's how we got to do it. Yeah. Yeah. I think we need to create competitions for young guys to go against our old guys. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Heck, it would be fun. Yeah. I think, I can see that going somewhere for sure. So in 2024, you ran against the sitting sheriff, who we all know, who'd already been in office for over a decade. What made you decide to actually, I don't even know. What made you decide to run? Well, you know, it's, you look at what you do. And I looked at things that I felt like weren't being acknowledged, that weren't being addressed in our county. I struggle with ADHD on steroids, so yeah. And so I started looking at things that if I had the opportunity, I would try to implement these things in the county. And I'm not here to say anything negative about the previous sheriff, but it was a situation that I felt like our growth, the advantage of working with youth for so long showed me the things that our youth were dealing with. But once they got out of high school, there was nothing there for them to reach out to. Right. Because we had a lot of safeguards and a lot of stuff in that. So there was a lot of programs I felt like that if I could be the sheriff, this is what I would do. And of course, I had that sit down with the family, and I visited a Catholic priest because I'm Catholic, and I visited with the Lutheran minister. And as God would do it, their answers were almost identical. It was pretty amazing. And so at that point, I felt like, but the biggest thing was I had to do this as a servant, and as not just a public servant, but do this in the honor and the service of my Lord and Savior. Right. Yeah. And that to me was what I wanted to bring to the table. I love it. And the term for me, I use it even during the election in two groups that I spoke with. I feel like in order to make that happen, we have to go old school. We have to go old school. We'd walk out, shake a hand, or we would acknowledge people, and we would get in the conversations of good and bad, and then at the end of the day, we'd shake our hand and go back home, and nobody was offended, and so that's the big thing for me, and so I knew it was going to take a lot to run for office, and it was going to take a lot of my time. Plus, I was also working a full-time job at the time, so yeah. But you know, I prayed about it and continued that direction. So the good news is having won that election, I'm able to do the things that I made a commitment to do. Right. And the goals were to create certain divisions that would help make our county community better. Yeah. That's the best way to look at it. Right. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that stuff too. So when it came to the campaign itself, when you're running for sheriff, is it just getting, like you said, getting out there, shaking a bunch of hands, kissing babies, all that type of stuff? Yeah. So I will tell you the other funny one. I told this during the campaign and when I met groups, you know, I'm very biblical. So And I had just bought a candy apple red Mustang for fuel mileage. But anyways, and I literally picked houses to go visit that I didn't know, randomly picked them, and I did 40. I said, I'm going to visit 40 places, and I'm going to ask questions. What do you know about the current sheriff? What do you know about our community? That kind of thing, to get a feel. And that is really kind of what got me on the track to do that, to run for the office. But it was an idea that the sheriff at that time wasn't really known by members of the community. And going old school, the sheriff should be known for pretty much everybody in the county, you know, and we're not that big of a county yet. No. Thank God. We're still in a good situation. But I do believe that someone should be able to pick up and contact me directly on my phone and have that conversation. But at the same time, again, I have that ability to say, hey, as much I know you're upset, but the guys did the job right. They did what my expectations were as a leader, and it may not have gone your way, but at the same time, that person say, thank you, Sheriff, I appreciate the conversation, and we go forward and we move on and we grow as a community. So, yeah. So I think that's the big thing is reaching out, getting to know your community. I do my own Facebook. I run it. I put everything out. I put out everything on there. And I've had multiple people, no, you need to get someone to do it for you. I said, no, I want people to know what I'm feeling as their leader, and I want to know I'm there for them. And so to me, that's that connection with Facebook. And interestingly enough, I've had two of those men that are telling me I need to be standing next to me when the members of the community walk up and say, Sheriff, we love your Facebook. We love that you're talking to us and everything. Yeah. And one of the things I post at the end of every post, I always post Gillespie County proud. And I'm so proud of Gillespie County because, you know, the 95% of the population is doing what we ask of them. They're doing everything that we don't have to handle. That. It's the 5% that we're working on, you know. But when you have a population like us as Gillespie County and they're doing the right thing, how could you not be proud of them? And people ask me why I say that. I ask them, you're not causing things. I'm proud of you for being a good community member. So I'm very proud of Gillespie County. Yeah. And it's starting to take off a little bit with my Gillespie County proud quote. But anyway, so yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit before we actually got started. Maybe touch on a little bit here, but why do you think Gillespie County chose you? You know, you talked about a little bit about the God, you know, bringing God into it. And I think that was a big part of it. But do you think you want to tie into that, you know, talk about that a little bit more, why they chose you?
Absolutely. My true gut feeling and heartfelt feeling is working with youth for so long, you know, kids will pick up if you're lying. Kids will pick up if you're poking them in the back and not, you know, stabbing them in the back and kind of stuff like that. So I think that I built a good reputation of trust, you know, honest. I have over almost 4,000 plus contacts on my phone. Not many people can say that, but they could pick up the phone. And the one thing I will tell you to a student, and you would have been known that if you come to me, I'm going to tell you the truth. And that has to happen for us to grow. If I sugarcoat it, you're going to think, okay, I'm doing partially wrong, not all not. But if I said, man, it's all wrong, we got to stop. And I love you, but you can't do that anymore. So I really think that it was that. And I really just think that not only did I see some of the changes that needed to happen, I think the community saw things that they saw needed to happen. And I told them the same thing that they were wanting to hear or what they were looking for. Right. And, you know, in this society, I think that we have to grasp that it's a team effort. There is no, I might be the sheriff, but I count on 70 people working with the sheriff's office to make it work. The same thing goes for, we might be Gillespie County, but Gillespie's counting on the 30,000+ people that are living here to make it work. So I think the vision that I had was the same as a lot of people in the community had as well. Yeah, right. Well, so January 1st, 2025 is when you took office. How was day one like? I mean, I know that had been kind of crazy. I will tell you that Yvonne Albertal, I want to make sure she watches this. So, you know, you're taking every breath because, you know, you're thinking, all right, I'm about to raise my right hand for a very important job. I'm about to take the responsibility of the 57th largest county in the state of Texas out of 254. And, of course, all that's swirling in your brain. And so they finally called me up to get sworn in. And Yvonne Albertal's ringtone is the Andy Griffith Show. So, as I'm walking up to go up there, all of a sudden her phone goes off and you hear that whistling and everybody just bust out laughing. And it couldn't have been any better to break the ice. She's apologized to me on a large level, but it really broke the ice. The group applauded, everybody laughed, and it was I thank God saying, hey, take a deep breath. I got you, Andy. You know, so anyways, it was definitely for a guy that's been in law enforcement as long as I have to have committed to being a police officer. It is definitely a highlight of my career. But at the same time, it's one thing saying it, now doing it is a totally different ballgame. Yeah. But I knew it was kind of the starting block of what I wanted to prove to the community, that I'm on their side. We're going to make it work. So it was interesting, but but I'll have to share that video with you at some point in time. But
that'd be great.
Yeah, but God has a way of sending you a message if you listen to it. So yeah.
So I want to talk about the just day in life in the sheriff's office. So a lot of people, they probably don't know, but for folks that don't know, what is the difference between a sheriff's office and the police department, local police department? Because there is some different, obviously you have the county side, local city, but there's some major roles that you have.
Absolutely. So when you look at the county of Gillespie is the 1,100 square miles. Anything that falls in that county is the jurisdiction of the Gillespie County Sheriff's Office. So we have the jurisdiction as deputies from county line to county line of the 5 that touch Gillespie County. And then the cities, if they're a police department, they have the jurisdiction of the incorporated city limits. So Fredericksburg city limits would constrict them to the 15 square miles that they have and so forth, unless something happened that allows them to start a pursuit or something of that nature, go out of that. The key factor is working together. And I've been very blessed that Chief Brian Vorauer and myself have worked really well together since day one, and we're going to continue to. I jokingly say, if it doesn't work, it's your fault. I just tell them that. But that's really the jurisdictional issues. Yeah. They will back us up out in the county, and we will back them up in the city. So it's not a written in stone, a fenced in barbed wire territory.
Right.
But that's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have the same goals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That makes sense for sure. So Gillespie County is a big rural area, like you mentioned, but it's also one of the most visited small towns in Texas, obviously.
Yeah.
How does the mix of quiet ranch land, that we've all been around for, like my whole life, and the weekend tourist crowds change the way that you do your job?
So, and here's the deal. The part that I love is I still wear a uniform and I drive a marked unit, and I get to come out and play, so to speak. I run traffic. I go back up deputies on calls. I'll take, if they need it, I'll take a call,
okay.
So that kind of thing. But really, it's those patrol deputies that are doing that. So when I will say this, I drove to Comfort for 2 years, and I'm driving, trying to be at work by 7 a.m. 150 cars coming towards Gillespie County at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, where are they all going? But now that we're seeing construction on 87 South and on 87 North, I would challenge anyone who sees this, go sit out there and count how much traffic is coming into the Gillespie County area, and not driving through, but coming in to visit. And then you take 290 East and 290 West. Then you take 16. You add both north and south. So you've got basically 6 major roadways that draw them in there. And years when I first started, the draw was Fredericksburg. There was no question. It was Fredericksburg.
Right.
They were going to bring them into Fredericksburg. But over the past 10 years, the wineries have created that during the day, we have a good flow of people in the county of Gillespie at these wineries and these different places to visit. And then we still have our people that go to Fredericksburg. Fortunately for us, and maybe unfortunately for Fredericksburg, but after 6, when all the wineries close, they all go to Fredericksburg. So we just kind of see that. But I think that we're now seeing enough businesses out there that our deputies are handling those traffic volumes and those calls that are out in the county.
That's great.
So yeah, and I sit out there on 290, and it's just it's hard when you run traffic. You have to stop going the flow of traffic. There's no way you can cut across the 2 lanes because the traffic is just so congested. Right. So you kind of have to learn that on a safety value. But even if they're just coming to Fredericksburg, they have to traverse through the county, which means our guys are a part of that.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, in DPS, I know is out.
Absolutely.
Every time I go out to 290 East, there's a trooper out there.
Yes, sir.
So.
And there have been some changes in the Highway 290 Alliance, bringing that speed limit down to 60 is a huge positive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, adding turn lanes out there, that's a huge positive.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. It doesn't eliminate from the accidents, but I still think it has improved the fact that we're not seeing as many fatalities out on 290 East.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean everybody's driving 60, but it does at least increases the chance of people driving 60 that the accident aren't severe.
Yeah, which, of course, there's been quite a few pretty major fatalities out there on 290. I dealt with a few in the Air Force when I was out in California, some major vehicle accidents. Luckily, the ones I was a part of, there wasn't any fatalities, but there were some major injuries. Cars, crumbled up like beer cans and stuff. But how is dealing with something like that? In the few occasions I had, there were kids involved. Luckily, they were all okay. They had to be airlifted and stuff. But how is dealing with that as a law enforcement guy on a pretty regular basis?
Yes, we've had some pretty bad tragedies in Gillespie County over the last so many months. It's been a crazy 18 months going on 17 as a sheriff, and those guys that have taken that jump with me into that, we've seen a lot. It really comes down for me as a sheriff and I hope the guys appreciate, but I check on them after we have a major accident or anything, and it's really just discussing, getting it out there, saying, hey, we're not superhuman. This should bother you. I mean, if it bothers you, I expect that. Yeah. But, each person has their own. Mine is my faith. I turn everything over to God. And I think there's a lot of our deputies that do that. I think just conversations with their supervisors or with other people, you don't forget it. You can compartmentalize it and put it away, but you don't forget it.
Yep.
And each wreck brings its own different story to the scenario. So, yes.
Right, not just wrecks, obviously everything else you deal with too. You mentioned the suicides and all that. And there's, I didn't realize that was such a big problem within our area, specifically, within town, talking to other, police department guys that I know and stuff. But there is quite a few suicides that we have to deal with too.
We really do. And one of the biggest things that I did on January 2nd immediately was grab 2 men and said, hey, you are now our 2 mental health deputies, and this is what you're going to be doing. And we actually took one, and we now have 2 deputies that are in the ISD that patrol our elementary and primary.
Okay.
And we're going to make a few changes, but we're still going to have 2 deputies involved. And I think that's huge when you talk about early, how do we get to the kids and how do we teach? That's how we do. We put those people in there.
Yeah.
And we're sharing the effort with the PD. But when you look at the mental health, right now I have a deputy by the name of James Cruzy. Man, I asked him to be here, and he exceeded where I expected him to be on the first year. Wow. And he just runs with it. But I think, you say, hey, I'm going to do this when I become proficient. I think James, being by need and necessity, became proficient in the first 4 months of doing the job. He has really done an amazing job of working with the community, working with those agencies and entities that help with suicide and help with mental health. Yeah. And, one of my hopes as his role and eventually I'd like to have 3 people that do nothing but work with mental health.
That'd be great.
And when you look at the mental health solution for me, is not only are we helping the people that need the help, but they're not going into stages where we're having to respond at 100 miles an hour, going through highways at 100 miles an hour, going through traffic at high rate. And then we don't roll up on a person who's struggling mentally with a weapon. And then we unfortunately have to make the ultimate choice. And so I'm really at a point where that I really believe that the prevention side of mental health is where we need to be. So my rules are, if they need medication, we get the medication. If they need a ride to a doctor to get their evaluation, then we get them a ride to the evaluation. And James has taken the bull by the horns on that. And he checks on them. He checks on multiple people on a weekly, daily basis. But mental health, the one thing I learned through school is that a lot of our students are struggling. Yeah. And just because they graduated from high school doesn't mean all of a sudden they were miraculously healed. So that was what I wanted, James, was that continuation of our students. And the other thing that I would see our students in struggling mentally were in our facilities of jail or going to prison based on their lack of mental help that they needed. So that was a big thing for me. So unfortunately, we do have a high volume of suicide in the Gillespie County area.
Yeah. Well, you being a spiritual guy too, I think we are definitely in spiritual warfare right now. And
Amen.
We've talked about it a lot with that in St. Mary's, and I know you guys talked about it at Holy Ghost, and it's still Holy Ghost, or
yes, sir.
Yeah, Holy
absolutely,
Ghost.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's been a topic amongst our community and just the Christian world in general. But we are definitely under spiritual attack, especially the family. The family's getting attacked at so many different angles right now. So I think, if you're not, especially guys, men, I like to talk about this aspect because there's a lot of us men who don't have maybe groups of guys to turn to. It could be law enforcement guys, or it could just be the regular, guy who works at Ace Hardware. But be able to turn to some guys. We have a great group on Saturdays. I know some other cops have been coming to it.
Yes.
But a great group of guys that come together on Saturdays to do a little exercise and then just talk about what's happening, So I think we need more of that for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, actually, yeah, they just brought your name up the last 2 Saturdays about some things they're going to have coming up with getting into prisons and jails.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into the jail. Yes, sir.
So, but yeah, I think not having a group of guys to be able to turn to and just, talk, whatever you might have that's going on in your life. So I think if, the listeners out there, try to plug in with a group of guys.
Absolutely.
Talk about God, have that come in your life. And I think that will definitely help a lot of the things that are weighing you down,
Absolutely. And the thing of it is you think you're having problems and the person you reach out to is having problems, and before long you're helping each other out with each other's problems. But if you don't tell anyone, no one knows. And people go, well, last time I did it, I got burned. They laughed at me. Well, then keep trying. Keep going.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. You're not going to always hit the right person the first time. But I agree with you. We have to reach out to each other. And, as a leader, as a sheriff, and having the things that we've gone through, I have multiple men and women that have reached out and say, hey, are you good, Sheriff? We saw what you were dealing with last week, or we saw what you dealt with yesterday. Yeah. And I have nothing but the highest gratitude of what they're doing. I'm not too big to say, hey, thank you. I'm not too big to shed a tear when a minister or a priest call me and say, hey, I've been thinking of it, man. Hey, that's God talking. Awesome. Yeah. So, and I think that we live in a world that we have to accept that we need each other. And that's why I said we're a successful county that I'm proud of because we work well together.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So I want to get into our youth a little bit more again. So,
yes.
I saw it when I was in high school and even prior to high school, middle school, but you've spoken a lot about the drugs ending up in the hands of younger people within our county. How big of a concern is that right now? And what is the office doing right now to try to...
Huge concern. I always said this, if one kid gets a hold of drugs, it's no different than one kid getting a hold of a gun and hurting himself, And it's not a matter, I don't believe at a certain age, it's really choice. I think it's an answer. It's a self-medication situation. It's, I want to be popular.
Yep.
I want to be with their friends. And that's where having that interaction with kids as officers in schools really help. We have a problem. There's no question about it. I'm not going to sit here and deny and try to say we don't have a drug problem in Gillespie County, but we do. One of the first things outside of the mental health, the next thing is to try to grow our narcotics division, get more guys involved. And that's what we did. And so I still think it needs to grow based on the volume of what they're doing. But since I've taken office, these guys, so my rule with these guys is that they have any sense that our narcotic or illegal materials coming to Gillespie County, they're to get involved. Whether they're assisting DPS, DEA, ATF, SAPD, Bexar County, Kirk County, Kendall County, any county that I feel like is going to touch us with narcotics, they're to get involved. And if you want to see a lot of their work, go to the Gillespie County Facebook page, and we post it. We post the arrest. We post what they're picking up. But to me, if we have the potential of one person, one loved one's child getting into something they don't need to, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we don't have a great community, because we do, but we're not immune, and we really have to accept that. One of the biggest things for me is I have 4 sons, but I have 3 that I've raised here in Gillespie County, and it's an everyday work. I'm not immune because I'm a sheriff or in law enforcement, but you have to be a part of their daily world as a parent, one way or another. And so that is a support to what the narcotics guys are doing. Plus, we have canines. We have 3 canine dogs.
That's new too, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, and then we have one that's assigned to a task force interdiction that covers Kirk County, Kendall County, Gillespie County.
Oh, okay.
And so we're doing everything that we can at the highest level to prevent narcotics coming into Gillespie County.
Right.
And that's because I don't want one kid to struggle or die from that in that use.
Well, that's one of the scary things. Of course, our kids are a little bit younger, 4, 2, and 6 months old, so they have some time to get into that. But but basically the peer pressure side of it and all that. But there's going to be a whole new, I'm sure, worries when it comes to when they're at that age.
Absolutely.
But obviously, the marijuana lead into this and to that and to that. There's that part of it. But now with the fentanyl, and all that stuff, you never know. They could try one thing. It could be their very first time trying something. All of a sudden, boom, they're
and unfortunately in my career, I lost a student doing just that.
Really?
And that student has never been forgot. And that's part of one of the reasons why I'm very strong on pushing that. I dedicate making that happen to that young man and as a force of reckoning to do what we do. Mm-hmm. And so you know, whoever wants to look at a parent on a young man that made one decision that day that cost him his life at the age of 16, nobody does. And so my ultimate goal is to work hard as an office to say, hey, we may not be perfect, but dadgum, we're going to try to get there as closely as possible. Yeah. And in the 18 months since these gentlemen have been doing what they're doing, we've managed to take weapons off the street here in Gillespie County. We've managed to keep weapons from coming into Gillespie County. Mm-hmm. We've managed to keep a lot of methamphetamines, heroin, fentanyl, narcotics, cocaine coming into county. And it's because these guys are working hard. They're given the freedom to do what they need to do to make it work. But the biggest thing is we're working with our neighbors and working together for one goal, and that's to get this stuff off the street. Mm-hmm. So
and everybody seems to be on the same page.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and the thing of it is you know, we've made the news because of some of the busts. The big one was the FedEx driver. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh gosh, yeah, wow, that was crazy.
When the guys told me that what was going on, I was like, okay, well, let me know how it turns out. And they worked on that for 4 buys, but you know, you just never know.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. And the ultimate goal is to work at a pace that's safe. That's the first thing for our officers and the public. But work at a pace that people say, probably shouldn't consider this in Gillespie County. Because then if we've done that, that means that 70 of us that work for Gillespie County have done their job. And that's what I would be proud of to say that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you brought in the facility dog, too. Is that a mental health?
We brought in Banjo. And so when I worked for Kendall County, they had a dog named Renee.
Okay.
And so I didn't invent a wheel. And that dog was designed to be around kids or people struggling with mental health.
Okay.
And so forth, provided by us, that service. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we're not kind of using Banjo because one of the deputies that did that went into a school and he did what I did. He fell in love with that school-related program. So he's doing that right now. So we'll eventually get Banjo back out on the street.
Okay.
But really it's, you know, again, when I talked about the toughest job I've done was being an SRO/instructor was that emotional side, that roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And that's because I took those rides emotionally with students. And we unfortunately have some students that struggle. So with my own eyes, I've witnessed students that didn't want to talk, but as soon as that emotional dog came in, they just broke down and started talking to the investigators, et cetera.
Wow.
And so there's the purpose for that. I think that there's a need for that, and we're going to eventually capitalize on that.
Right.
But I think, again, as we're growing, we have to make adjustments at that point. So we'll get Banjo back out there.
I love it. Yeah, get Banjo back.
Yes.
So you said one conversation could prevent a tragedy, even something as serious as a suicide or a mass shooting. Where's that belief come from? Is that something just learned over
I've
years?
seen it. You know, as an SRO for the school district for so long, and not only just working in our school, but working with other districts and throughout the state, one of the things I have a program called ACT, and it's basically safety. But one of the acronyms that I use in the training is called TRICS: training, reaction, interaction, knowledge, and simplicity. So that is based on experience as a SRO and as a police officer. You know, again, going back to you're having a bad day today, I can either make it worse, I can make it better, or I can make it calmer. And I may not make it better, but I can make it calmer.
Right.
But that's that interaction, having that ability to do that. Now, I will say this. The public says modern day law enforcement needs to have de-escalation. I went to the academy in 1993. That was taught in 1993.
Okay.
It's not that de-escalation hasn't been trained to us, and not that we don't need to continue to utilize it. And I think that most officers do try their best to de-escalate, but we're dealing with a whole different mindset than we used to before.
Yes.
The badge doesn't work. The uniform doesn't work. The car doesn't work. So now we have to sometimes get physical.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at our use of force abilities, that mental health is good. They have no fear of us at that mental health stage. And that's why I think working together makes that happen, doing that.
Right.
But when you look at the youth, they're seeing things that you and I never saw thanks to social media and the technology out there. They're seeing things that you and I would struggle with today.
Yeah.
So and then reaching out, the battle is that they're also self-medicating with narcotics, and they're looking at the internet for their own answers, and they like what they're getting, and so they really never get the help they want.
Right.
And, in the tragedy recently of the murder-suicide, I wish that we'd had an avenue for that individual to reach out and hopefully talk, but you can put it out there. It's their choice to actually.
And that was a local? That wasn't somebody?
They were not locals. They were out of county.
Oh, were they?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, but either way, you would hope that someone would reach out.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And the struggles that our community and communities around us, and the point I want to grasp to anyone that says, man, Fredericksburg's, nobody wants to talk about the crimes. I post them on my Facebook, so I'm not keeping any crime secret. Mm-hmm. But the goal is to say, hey, we have these issues now. Let's all get together and how do we solve it? How do we work on getting that solution?
As a community.
And so but at the same thing on mental health, once we've only been at this for 18 months, I think as we continue to grow with resources, I think people will say, hey, I can reach out to an entity that will help me. And that's how we're going to have to build it. We got to build it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are coming up on a year of one of the toughest things I think we've gone through ever, within our region and Texas in general. And you talked a lot about, of course, recently working with other counties when it comes to the drug interdiction, all that type of stuff. But last July 4th, when the Hill Country went through the July 4th flood, which was, again, one of the most catastrophic things I think we've ever dealt with, what was that week like for Gillespie County? Obviously, it mainly happened over there in Kerr County, but what was that like? In
one big word, exhausting. We were there day 2. Of course, my role was to make sure that Gillespie County was good before I could send in. I needed resources on a law enforcement level, but once we knew that, we rallied the call, and I didn't have to ask. Once they were already asking me when I said, guys, let's give it a day. Let's get resourced and let's do that.
Right.
But then it really was mobilizing and taking off to Gillespie County, meeting with hundreds of law enforcement across the region that were coming in to help search for bodies and hope, and our wish is to find survivors.
Yeah.
But the key thing is, and I've said this before, it wasn't just law enforcement. There were crane operators. There were bulldoze operators, even our commissioners sent, along with our firefighters and EMTs, went over there. And I even took jailers because they wanted to be a part of it to go help search and everything. Mm-hmm. And so it was, again, as a sheriff taking a new lead, you're like, okay, I got to take care of us, make sure we're good, and then head out there. But it was never, I didn't have to beg anyone to go, and it's a common, we're neighbors, and you take care of your neighbors.
Sure.
And I have no doubt that if we would have needed it, vice versa, they'd have done it in a heartbeat. Yeah. But I will say that there was a point where I told everybody, we're not going back tomorrow. We're all going to go home to your families, go take a deep breath, because you have to understand that this was historical tragedy for Texas and America.
Yeah.
And, to lose 127 people and still have 2 unaccounted for right now, being a child and an adult, you don't shake that real easily, But I think that the one thing that I did see, and I posted about that, was a division of amazing people that had their own professional abilities coming together to make one thing come together. And we couldn't have done it with just one law enforcement group. There's no way.
Yeah.
So having that diverse part, I think that even though it's a year later, it's going to be years before we finally look up and say, okay, we're not going to forget, but we're going to pray that and work our best to not let that happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, a lot of people said, and you just said, it's really an act of God of how that whole situation occurred. I mean, the way the rains hit and the North and South Fork like that was just insane, and it being in the middle of the night too.
Right.
Was crazy. But the whole, not just law enforcement, like you said, but just general public, people coming together and helping search. And, I actually we went to Comfort to help out, search over there. And then on the following Friday, we actually went to Camp Mystic. A group of like 50 of us from here in Fredericksburg went to Camp Mystic to help demo the Eastland's house. And
gotcha.
Ooh, yeah, that was just seeing, all the girls' stuff there under the big, the carports and stuff, where they had the families come in and going through it all. That was, that was tough.
Yes,
yeah,
very. Being a parent and you pray that you outlive your kids, and this is not something that actually happened for a lot of families. MHDD, one of the representatives called me and said, hey, what are you doing? What's your thoughts? And And I asked her, really the question is, what do you need over there? And she mentioned that she needed some air mattresses for the families to get them a place to stay. They were meeting at a church there, waiting for notice and everything like that. And, you know, I've been in law enforcement 32 years at that time, 33 years. And, you know, you feel like you've handled and seen things. And so I went to Walmart. We got friends that we all pitched in, and we bought like 40 air mattresses. And so I drove over to Kerrville to deliver those at the church. And literally when I walked in and as I pulled up, they would snap up, the families hoping for good news. And when I walked in and handed, you know, we took in the air mattresses, as a professional and as a guy that likes to talk a lot, I was lost for words. It was so overwhelming to see the faces of these parents. And I hate to be selfish, and I know we all are, but none of us want to experience that. Yeah. So my heart and hat goes off to those families that experienced it. Right. So yeah, but at the same time, you're seeing a united front of people coming together, such as the MHD groups for counseling, to support, you know, that coming together too as well. So yeah.
What did that actual event teach you from, you know, prepared standpoint? I mean, it's hard to prepare for something like that. There's a lot of fingers being pointed and all this stuff, but did that teach you something about how we could be potentially prepared for certain events like that in Gillespie County?
Yeah, you know, I will tell you as a professional and watching that happen, you know, Sheriff Lita and those people over there did the best they could under the circumstances no one predicted. Right. Yeah. And so, but the one thing that I picked up on is, you know, at some point the finger pointing starts. And I will say that the worst thing we can do is start pointing fingers early on in that rescue and that attempt. You know, communication is huge, you know, and since then we have different groups have gotten together and discussed, if this was us, what would we need, what we need to do. You know, in every equation to prevent or to support, it's financial, you know, and so you have to look at the money. Where does the funds come? How do we do that? Right. I'm one of those guys I would hate to learn where the funds come from during the crisis versus if we created the funds before the crisis, that's a much better situation. And here's the deal. I train, but I always tell them no plans 100%. If we can get to 80% level of readiness, we're in good shape because we can't always predict how it's going to go. Right. When I first heard the numbers of potentially how many people were lost, I was totally taken back. I was like, it's hard for me to phantom that many people missing. And at that time they were talking 70, 80. And I was like, and then when we hit the 100 mark, I was like, wow. And you know, you multiply that by 2 parents, that's 200 people right there that are knowing that they may never see their loved one again. So yeah. But I think the preparedness comes that it's a mindset that no matter how it's going, we come together, we have to pause, look at the leadership, make decisions, and go forward. We can't sit there and bicker. We can't sit there and argue. We have to make decisions and go forward. And then each individual group has to accept a responsibility. Yeah. And, you know, of course, when we mobilized to help Kerr County, 300, 400 officers, law enforcement, firefighters in a building getting sent to where they needed to be to search grids and all that kind of stuff. That takes a lot to put that together. Right. And so, yeah, it's I think that you just kind of have to put the fist down and start doing the job, getting out there and looking and really working at it, stuff like that.
I can't imagine, honestly, being in that position to have to direct operations on something like that. You know, like I mentioned, being in the Air Force, we'll go through, certain things may happen on base where you have an on-scene commander, and then we have a BDOC, Base Defense Operations Center, which is a lot of where, you know, say if you have a bomb threat or active shoot or something, you have the egress, ingress routes, casualty collection points, you're mapping a lot of that stuff on these. Now we have, you know, gigantic TVs where you can draw it all in on this big TV, which when I was BDOC controller, you all had to do with like protractors and all this stuff, set up your radiuses,
and pencils, yes.
And then the on-scene commanders doing the same thing on their end, but something like that's like, holy cow, I can only imagine how.
No, you know, just listening to the logistics of what was happening, and you know, it's where, like, I texted the sheriff, Lisa, I'm at your disposal. You tell me what you need. And of course, that was just a gesture of we got your back kind of thing, right? But for him to look at me and go, oh yeah, we need this, that was not going to happen. Yeah. It's not. But at the same time, he's at the command center. We're listening, and my role as a sheriff, even though I'm a leader of the next county, it wasn't to go in there and say, hey, I'm a sheriff, I get to do this. It was more, go with the guys. We go look for bodies or we look for potential rescues, and you just take your role and you take it, and you don't go, well, I'm this guy. You just go out there, man, and you do your job. And I was blessed to work with a lot of ex-military, a lot of retired men that came out of the woodworks to go help out.
Special Forces guys, Navy SEAL, everybody.
Right. In tragedy, rank means nothing other than the person that's organizing it needs to be at that level. Yeah. But you just have to accept your role, what you're doing in that role.
So, one of the things that a lot of people are talking about was the emergency alert systems and stuff like that. Did that event, I guess, teach you anything or from the emergency management side of things? Of course, there's certain individuals that sit in those roles, and of course you as a sheriff and stuff, but did y'all look at the systems we have in Gillespie County after a certain thing, like, hey, maybe we should see how our systems are kind of, right. I don't know. I mean,
so for us as Gillespie County, absolutely systems and alerts and all that, an alert is only as good as if you adhere to it. You can get 20 alarms and you go, but for us is we had to take a good look at the Pedernales River. Yeah. And we had to take a good look at all of a sudden we've got RV parks in that we didn't have before. People are building subdivisions closer to them that we didn't have before. Right. And so those are the things you have to look at. And people can say, well, it hadn't flooded in 100 years. But it's that 100. When was the last 100 year?
Right. And that was like 1,000-year flood. You never know.
Absolutely. And so what we have to contend with is that I can't force people to do anything. Yeah. I can ask them, hey, you need to leave, whatever. But I think the biggest thing I take away from this is when in doubt, get out. That's just, if there was even a potential question, get them out. And being a sheriff since February of 25, we started having all these big fires, and we were scaring a lot of people. Hey, man, we hate to tell you this, but get a few things together, and you're going to have to leave if that fire gets there. We can't stop it. And so, but at the same time, we had to accept that some of them were going to tell us no. Yeah. But we had to make every effort. And I think that's where we have to make every effort. Yeah. We have to make them aware. It's their choice if they really want to leave. Sure. But at the same time, they have to accept that we may not be able to come back and get them based on the circumstance. But I think that my motto has always been, when in doubt, call us out as law enforcement. But I think when in doubt, get out. That's kind of thing. And, it's hard. It's hard for a decision to be made. Sure. But I think to me, it would be that we have a way of reaching out to that. The communications office, dispatch, our emergency management group, they have now working on getting a system that can reach out to thousands of people, but they have to sign up for it. So if you're listening to this podcast and you live in Gillespie County, find out how to sign up for it so you get those alerts and those messages. And that's how we're going to win, is that alert, that message. Yeah. And here's what I'm going to say as well, too, what I learned. When you have a potential during the day, it's one thing. But when you have a potential that's going to be dark, go with the side of caution. Yeah. Yeah. Don't wait, because it's a lot harder to mobilize and move at dark than it is during the day.
Well, and that's the thing about this whole, the July 4th flood, is it hit at night. And, when you have like a major hurricane coming, usually some lead time for everybody on the coast to go ahead and pack up, get out. And sure, they may have seen on their phones, you can look at your forecast coming up, like, okay, we got some rain and stuff, but we all see that, and you never think that something like that would happen. So there was, going back to the finger point, all these people saying, oh, they should have done so much more. To me, that's just such a crazy thought, because it hit in the middle of the night like that. Nobody would have guessed it'd been that much rain. Right,
absolutely.
I mean,
and that amount of water, and I don't think people understand the amount of water until you're on site and you're looking at the trees bent and wrapped around cement walls and whole parking lots washed away. You're just like, and my wife and I ride bikes, and we had actually been in Kerrville like a week beforehand riding our bikes. So I could recall what it looked like a week before the event, and then now being out there during the event and after the event, it was wild and unimaginable to me. Yeah. Yeah, it was catastrophic, and it looked like a war zone. Driving from Kerrville to Hunt, when we went out to Camp Mystic, it's like, oh my gosh, I've never seen so much destruction in my life. Absolutely, and all caused by water. Yeah, just by water. Yeah. Dynamite, TNT, C4 is one thing, but by nature, water is pretty crazy. Insane. So if someone is new to Gillespie County, maybe they just moved here within the last few months or sometime last year, or they're planning on moving here, what's one piece of safety advice you'd want them to know right now, if you had to number one is learn your streets, learn your county.
Yeah.
Get your loved ones, even your kids, if you've got children, hop in your van, your truck, whatever, and just run around Gillespie. One, you're going to enjoy the views. It's beautiful.
Right.
But two, you want your kids to know what Highway 16 is, what 87 is, what subdivision you live in. I live next to Enchanted Rock. Nope, I live next to this place. And because the one thing is when you're new and you call for help and you can't talk or say, where I'm at,
that's a really good point.
I know I live out the north side of the county. Well, that doesn't give me a whole lot, but
it's a lot of area.
Yeah. And, the other thing is to get out and take a look at what community things that we have, get involved in the community, even as an attendee, because I will tell you, all you got to do is go online and there's something happening every hour, every day in Gillespie County, Texas. But I really think the biggest thing is to get to know the county, get out there, know the county. The perils of Gillespie County are by choice. We're not perfect. I always tell everybody that we have a beautiful community. I've lived here for almost 30 years, and I've raised 3 sons here and brought my oldest 2 to live here when they were younger. And so it's not like I have any fear of this community, but we're not perfect and we're not impervious to bad happening.
Right.
But I really think getting to know the community, the county, drive to Stonewall, Harper, and realize what's out there is extremely important for a newcomer.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. I had this old senior master sergeant who was one of our is a first sergeant. So basically, first sergeant in the Air Force they basically act as like a counselor for the unit. And this guy, he was funny. He'd been in the Air Force a long, long time. He had special operations type of experience and all this stuff. And he is so funny. We're on the Central Coast there in California, and he was a preparer. Like he had, you can get pretty crazy with preparing, This guy, he was kind of like that. He had all kinds of ingress, egress routes from Vandenberg for 60 miles, which way if something catastrophic happened. But you don't have to take it to that level. Right. But yes, knowing if a big fire happened like what we had,
absolutely,
where are you going to go? Like
absolutely.
If this thing is.
And if you're new, you're like, yeah. But get to know your county, know the county lines, take out a map with your kids and say, hey, this is Mason, this is Kendall County, this is Kerr County, and then, do a little trivia with them about things. Yeah. But really knowing your environment in any situation is the most important thing you can do. And then in the process, enjoy the awesome things that happen in Gillespie County.
Yeah. So we got some fun stuff. Be safe. Please don't drink and drive. So what does success look like for you as a sheriff? The next few years, a few years from now, what do you want to have built? You talked about it a little bit, but what do you want to have built here in the next few years?
I want to have us as a household name that people say, hey, we can count on the sheriff's department for mental health. We can count on them for doing drug interdiction, to keeping that out of our county. We're going to do our best to protect the community, know that we're out there. They can reach out to us and call us, and we'll do our best to help them out. But, for me, going back is I want to bring that historical value to Gillespie County to the forefront, because we have a beautiful community. And the biggest thing for me as a sheriff is to serve the public. We may not always be able to give them what they want, but we can do our best. But the number one thing is to provide the safety and public safety, is to prevent major things from happening. But again, we can put up all the speed limit signs, we can put up all that. It comes down to the community making choices as well. And, I always say this, when the community does things and we're working with all the potential problems and everybody's working together, then our guys don't have to run at 100 plus miles an hour to get to a disturbance, to get to a call, that kind of thing. So it's a constant work. But, I have my visions for my first year, which we accomplished, and I'm working on our 7 visions for this year, and I've got 5 for next year.
Okay.
And so, but it really is a learning curve every day. And at the end of an 8-hour day, me and the chief deputy are like, did you get anything done today? I said, I think I did. I'm not real positive, I said, but I have a list. I don't hit anything on the list, but I did get some things done. But, because you can't, one of my ultimate goals is someone walks in that office and wants to see me, I'm going to stop what we're doing. And I have a table in my office, and it's 6 people. And one of the biggest reasons why I put that in there was because going old school, men could talk to each other. And we could discuss things, and we could come up with a better solution. And I got to say, in 18 months, I've had some pretty serious conversations at that table.
So.
But at the same time, I was able to stand up and shake or give that person a hug and say, dude, we're on the same boat. You just haven't seen it, and I didn't know where you were coming from. But I hope that table, as long as I'm a sheriff, hears a lot of very powerful, angry, conversations that we hope we build. One of the things that I really encourage with us is I'm not a yeller. I did yell at my kids because that was my job. But anyhow, but when it comes to professionalism, my rule is I don't yell, you don't yell either, because we don't gain anything by yelling. Right. And so to build an office as a sheriff's office to where every mistake is a learning, as long as we learn from it, because we're going to make mistakes. It's just inevitable. We're going to make mistakes, but at the same time, whoever feels like they were wrong is willing to work with us and express that agree that we made a mistake, but yet grow from that mistake and be better at it, whether it's de-escalation, whether it's we raised our voice when we didn't need to, whatever it might be. But all I can say is to the public is that we don't respond because it's probably going wonderful for anybody.
Sure.
Yeah. We don't respond when everything's working perfect for everybody. We can try. So I think the ultimate goal for me is for us to create that traditional, we work together, this is our county, it's not mine, it's not yours, it's ours. And I'm raising 3 sons here, and my wife's a 6th generation German here, and we've been blessed to be married almost 22 years, and it's just a great community to raise your kids. And I'll throw this at you, but as a leader, as a teacher, I'm never going to come back home to Fredericksburg. Nothing to do here. It's boring. But when you have those kids and you find that woman or husband that you want to spend your life with, Fredericksburg's one damn good place to bring them home to.
100%.
And that's what I want to continue to build as a sheriff and as a leader, working with some great people in all levels, is to continue to have that place that Fredericksburg youngsters can leave and come back home to and say, this is where I was raised.
Sure.
And that's the ultimate goal of the Gillespie County Sheriff's Office.
There you go.
Make it a good home. That's it.
Yeah. I love that. So if anybody does need to reach out to sheriff office, or you said you're kind of an open book too. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, they can send you a Facebook message.
Yeah, send me a Facebook message, call the office, stop by. Wednesdays is the best because it'll be Monday to solve any problems over the weekend. My phone number's on the webpage, directly to me. It's on my business card. I don't hold it back. People go, well, man, everybody's got all your phone numbers. I said, you know what? The people of Gillespie County will call me because it's important. They don't call me because it's not. And so to me, it's not as much as it does buzz a lot, but it's not because it's stupid stuff. It's important to somebody. So reach out to me. Don't hesitate. What I really would like as a sheriff too is we have Facebook and social media and all that. But before you go and rant, give me a chance to solve the problem. Come by the office. I believe in the First Amendment to U.S. Constitution. I believe in the Constitution 1,000%. But sometimes if you need to vent, call me. I'll sit there with you on the speakerphone and I'll listen to every word. But I think sometimes it creates a negative amongst other people. And we need to stand united, not against each other. So
the problems with
but my
social
door is
media.
open. What's that?
It's one of the problems with social media.
Yes.
Come on, y'all. Just give them a call.
Yeah, my door is open, but I will say this: it's a go from the time I get to the office. And people say, "Do you work weekends?" I said, "I'll let you know Monday." I don't try to, but I can't tell you what's going to happen. And everything. The one thing I definitely want to leave you with is my former chief, Paul A. Strike, asked me how long I was going to stay with Fredericksburg. And I told him, I'll give you 150%, Paul, but in 2 years, I'll let you know. And if I leave in 2 years, that's why. I've been here almost 30 years. And there's a reason. And that's what I want people to take home. We're not perfect. We have our issues as a county, as a community, but we're going to strive to be better. We're going to strive to make that work. So come in here. Give us some time to prove to you that we are a great county, and hope you don't leave.
And of course, that's not just Fredericksburg. That's Harper. That's Stonewall. That's out there in Doss. So
and if you look at Gillespie County and you just take the historical value of Gillespie County, you can't open a page and go, oh yeah, I didn't know that. Oh my gosh, especially if you're new. And a lot of people don't know that it spells welcome and come back. When you come into Fredericksburg and you leave, the streets are named that way. And they're like, you're making it up. And then they'll come, okay, you're not making it up. So you got to realize there's a lot of historical value to Gillespie County. Yeah, and, you know, like I said before, we can't do finger pointing. We got to work together and make it happen. Sure. So, yeah. But no, I'm blessed. We're blessed.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love living here for sure. So last question for me, if you have to give a key piece of advice for maybe two parts of it, I guess, somebody that wants to get into law enforcement or maybe a brand new sheriff's deputy or a cop, what would that advice be?
My advice is, you know, number one, if you're hearing this and you're in your teens, stay out of trouble. Try your best not to stay out of trouble. I have a 20-year-old, he's 20 and a half, and he actually officially applied with the Fredericksburg Police Department today. What? So he was going through the process. I love it. But he constantly heard me, Emmett, be safe, but most importantly, be smart. Yeah. Some things you can't erase, you know. And so that's what I tell young folks. So if you're young and you're considering the future in law enforcement, it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor, but you have to meet requirements to get in the door. Right. The second thing is if you're thinking you're going to get in law enforcement and buy a F-350 and a boat the first 3 years in the career, not going to happen. I think I was in it like 20 years and I finally fought my first awesome thing. So that's some good advice to know that you're going to have to put some time in to gain that. But the most important thing is to stay valuable with your abilities. Work, and you know, you can't become a patrolman until you're 21. You can't go to the academy until you're 21. Maintain that value of hard work so that you have references and to get to the level of getting hired. But the other thing is I invite you, if you're interested at any age, to come in. We'll give you a ride-along form. You can hop in a patrol unit with a deputy, go out on patrol with them, come visit the jail. We'll walk you through the jail. The good news about the jail, to be a jailer, you only have to be 18 years of age. So I encourage people that are looking at becoming a patrol officer, get hired on with the jails. Yeah. That way you're not causing trouble. You're making a decent living with benefits. And then eventually you can segue into patrolman. Right. Yeah. But idea. Really, it is, it's not for everybody. I've had people get in it and within a few years are like, this is not what I'm looking at. Yeah. I will tell you truthfully, the thing I struggle with, and the chief deputy will tell you, is paperwork. So anyways, but that's the bigger part of what that is. So hone your skills, you know, on being able to dictate, report, write, that kind of thing. But really, I say, if you're a certain age and you can hire on with a jail somewhere, get in that. And then once you hit a certain age, start looking at the academy. A lot of agencies now are hiring, and they'll put you through the academy. We will do that as well at the Gillespie County Sheriff's Office. But again, if you don't make the background, that kind of stuff, and I tell this, the first sheet we give you as a Gillespie County Sheriff's Office is what you will have to go through, and it starts off with a psychological and a polygraph before you can actually process into the physical and all that. Okay. So these are things, and we're not asking, if I did this, if you were a teenager and you did stupid stuff, all we want is honesty. Yeah. So that's it. All we want is honesty. Yep. We all did stupid stuff when we were young, you know. But the key thing for me is that we do our best to maintain a good background. We're losing some good men and women because of their backgrounds. And that's what we got to do. So keep that clean if you're young, and then reach out to any agency. Most agencies have ride-along programs just to see what it's like. So that's what I would recommend.
Even DPS will, if my thing.
Absolutely, they do. Yeah. Yes. But anyways, we need you. We need young men, young women. We need them in the world, and we got to have them. So
yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well, this has been fun.
Amen. I appreciate you. Yes, sir. It's cool looking across from you now, Ryan, as a grown adult.
We were some silly kids. I mean, luckily, I think being in sports and all that kept a lot of us in line.
Absolutely.
You know, if you got kids with some kids nowadays, keeping them in sports and all that, you know, being in that team environment, having coaches and other father figures, will help. I think keep them out of trouble too. So
sounds good, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for the time.
Any last thoughts?
No, just be safe out there and God bless.
God bless. All right, y'all. Well, that's it for today. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, but also that little bell so you get notified anytime we put out videos and episodes just like this. And of course, if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you leave a review, that will also help us get these episodes out. So outside of that, y'all, we'll see you next time. Bye.